Hi guys, good morning. So today we're going to be talking about African colonization. This is a really big topic that we're going to cover kind of quickly because it is kind of confusing and we could spend several weeks talking about it, which is what I would rather us do. But for the sake of time, we're going to move kind of quickly this year through this. So if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to tell me. Let me know if you're confused about anything. And we're going to go through this kind of briefly, but we're still going to learn all of the really important things. So the first thing that we need to know is the definition of the word imperialism. Imperialism is when a country or territory is being taken over by a stronger or bigger country. The littler country is given no choice. So this would be like if, let's say, China, because we know that China is a really, really big country, tried to take over El Salvador, because we know that El Salvador is a really, really small country. So imperialism would be when a big country like that takes over a little country. So European imperialism. Many European countries began trying to take over other places. So we've learned about this already when we talked about the American Revolution, because Great Britain, which is a European country, took over what is now the United States. They took over that new place. And other European countries were also taking over the New World. Places like Spain and France, two good examples. All right, so this is happening again. So many European countries began trying to take over African countries to use their land and resources. Because Africa was a place that nobody had really explored much yet. They knew it was there. Obviously, there were people living there. People from Europe had been there before, but they had never tried to build anything new there. So they took control of a lot of the areas there. And they also took control of every aspect, which is just a fancy word for part, of people's lives. So they took total control of Africa. So why were they interested in Africa? Like we already mentioned, it was a place they hadn't been much. But there are three main reasons that the Europeans wanted to control Africa specifically. So we're going to talk about each of the three reasons on their own, but the three reasons are resources, Christianity, and science. Now those might seem like three really different reasons, so we'll talk about all three of them. The first one, resources. Africa had many materials that the Europeans wanted. So stuff like rubber plants to make rubber, mines to get gems from, and other resources that we can dig out of the earth, and the new land to build on. They also had a bunch of new plants and animals that the Europeans had never seen before, and there were people there. So they also used the people there as workers, and many of them were underpaid or abused. So they didn't treat the people who lived there very well, and they treated everything that was already there like it belonged to them. The second reason, Christianity. Christians saw it as an excellent chance to tell other people about the gospel. Now, Christians weren't the only people who went to talk about their faith, but they were the first people to go and the biggest group of people. So they're always the ones that we talk about. So Christian missionaries went to Africa to build churches, do volunteer work, and start schools. So they were trying to help educate the people there and also tell them about their religion. And there were a lot of people who became Christians because of this, and a lot of people who went to school because of this. The volunteer work they did was also stuff like building hospitals, and they did a lot of things where they just helped communities learn how to solve problems and those kinds of things. Science. This is one that most of you will be super interested in. So for science, there are many plants and animals that the Europeans had never seen before, like I told you earlier. So they wanted to learn more about them. Safaris and expeditions were taken to explore the wild parts of Africa. So they went to see all of the new things there, because Africa has a lot of different biomes. You remember biomes? We talked about those last year. There are a lot of different places that animals and plants can be found in Africa, because you can find deserts there, but you can also find rainforests there. And so the Europeans were really, really interested in this and wanted to learn more about it. Now, a few factors that made imperialism possible. So a few things that made it possible for them to do all of this. The first one is technology. They had new weapons, new steamships, railroads, all kinds of things that were made during the Industrial Revolution to make this kind of thing possible. Africans also caught diseases from the Europeans, and the Europeans were able to sell them medication. So this doesn't mean that the Europeans were like nasty and sick and came over and made everybody else sick. It just means that we have different diseases in different countries. A good example of this is, some of you might remember last year, I got really, really sick because I had dengue. And dengue isn't bad for everyone who gets it. There are a lot of people who get it and are just fine. But in America, or in the U.S., the part of the U.S. I'm from, we don't have it. We don't have any diseases that are transferred by mosquitoes like dengue is. So I had a really hard time with it because my body had never experienced anything like that before. And there are things that the United States has that if you moved there and you got sick, you would have a really hard time with it, but someone who had grown up in the United States wouldn't have a hard time with. It happens in every country, because we just have different kinds of sicknesses. And if you've lived there your whole life, you're used to the things that happen there, and they're not really that bad for you. So the Europeans were able to sell the Africans different kinds of medicine that they had, and they were able to kind of control them with that, because you wouldn't want to make the person who could make you better angry. So the next thing that made it possible is African tribes fought constantly with each other. They still do. And they were fighting over territory, so over land. Just like in the book we were reading in English class, how they were fighting, the Dinka and the Nuer were constantly fighting with each other, and they were fighting over land and where their cows would eat and where they would get water from, and just over everything. That's a thing that has always been happening in Africa. And it's just because the tribes don't really get along and they don't always speak the same language. So the Europeans noticed that, and they would make two tribes that didn't get along with each other be part of the same country, kind of. So they did this because then the two tribes wouldn't want to help each other, and then they wouldn't be strong enough to fight back because they were working by themselves. So the division of Africa. There are 14 European countries that were fighting over control. In 1884, the Berlin Conference was called to prevent a war. So it's just a big meeting to set rules about how they're going to divide up Africa. The African rulers were not asked for their opinion on this. So the only people who were present were European people. Several of the African groups fought against this but failed. So Europeans lived in Africa and controlled Africa for many, many years. That's why now, if you talk to people from certain parts of Africa, they speak French, or some of them have an accent that sounds like a British accent. They have that because they used to be British or French colonies. Just like the United States speaks English because they used to be a British colony. In Louisiana in the United States or in Canada, they speak French because both of those used to be French territories. In Texas and California and Nevada, they usually speak Spanish because those used to be part of Mexico or Spanish territories. Also in Florida, a lot of people speak Spanish because it used to belong to the Spaniards. So those are kind of ways that we can see this happening today. It's not still going on. Africa, for the most part, is independent, but you can still see where it happened. So we're not going to spend a ton of time on this, like I said, but I want you to know about it for when we move on to our next topic. For today, all I want you to do is take notes and then turn in a photo of your notes. All right? If you have any questions about this, let me know, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow.